Hi, and welcome to another interview in the series Creating a Life That Nourishes Body and Soul. Today, we're talking to Dr. Jackee Clement. She is a physician who specializes in helping people to deal with burnout, aside from being a doctor. That's not her specialty as a doctor. From the tender age of 4, Jackee's heart was set on becoming a doctor. She was passionate about healing others because she felt it was a noble pursuit to have a positive impact on lives, and it's the ultimate superpower. However, her curiosity extended beyond the constraints of traditional medicine. It fixated on preventative measures and holistic practices. Entering medical school was a dream realized, but the relentless pace, competition, and hierarchical structure triggered a cascade of challenges that she had not anticipated. The pressure to learn vast amounts of information at an unforgiving pace, coupled with the stress of medical education, led her down a path of severe anxiety. The toll on her well-being was profound. She continued working toward her goal of becoming a physician despite all the clues, emotional distress being a major one, that she that suggested she wasn't doing what she had set out to do. By the grace of God, she became a family medicine doctor. In the midst of these challenges, she embraced major life changes. She got married and welcomed a son during her residency, which added a new dimension to her personal journey. Balancing the responsibilities of family life with the demands of medical training brought both joy and additional complexity to her path. Out of necessity, she developed strategies that would enable her to strike the right balance between work and life. Her mission is to empower professionals to reclaim control over their time, fostering a harmonious balance between work and personal life. A few little bullet points about Jackee is that she grew up in the charm city of Baltimore, Maryland in the 90s. She had enough of said charm and decided to attend the University of Southern California. She went to Duke University School of Medicine and quickly fell in love with North Carolina weather and outdoor activities. She attended Novant Health Family Medicine residency near Charlotte, North Carolina. She works as a locums physician. She got certified as a life, health, and wellness coach, and she founded Good Journey. So welcome, Jackee. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for the conversation we're going to have.
Me too. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about, I mean, your story is so interesting to me. You want to tell us about how you came to be, because it's a wide range, and you really saw a need once you were living the dream of going to med school. You found some things that you needed to address, and not just for yourself, but to help others as well. You want to tell us what led you to that?
Gosh, it's a long story and a short story all in one. So, when I grew up in Baltimore in the 90s, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Baltimore, but there was a huge drug problem at that time, and it was, I think, considered one of the number one most violent places in America. It was competing with Detroit, right? So there was that. And I also grew up in a food desert, which is essentially
Mm.
saying it was hard to get fresh produce. So I didn't eat that well growing up. And so when I got to medical school, it was always in the back of my mind how important nutrition is for our health. And I could tell right away just from what I was learning that it just wasn't included in our education. And so there was a disconnect there for me. And I remember even having a meeting with our dean. So like each, gosh, there were around 200 students in medical school. And so we're all divvied up and we have deans, right? So I think it's like 40 students or so per dean. And so I was with my cohort and our dean, and he was asking us how we should change the curriculum. And I raised my hand and I said, hey, we really need to learn about nutrition in medical school. Like, how else are we supposed to counsel people about diabetes, hypertension? Um, and he just said, like, that's not going to happen. You don't come to
Mm.
medical school. How many of you come, to medical school to learn about nutrition? Show of hands. And I just will never forget that moment because it was just like, what am I doing here? Like, he's making it very clear the way I think is problematic. Um, and so I knew from that point on, like, I just didn't fit and I had to find my crowd. Luckily, I did. We went on to do amazing things in the community, and we did get fresh produce in our local clinic, and that's another story. But Yeah, I told you it's a long and short story, so you have to stop me when I start, rambling on about this because I'm really passionate about that. But it made it clear to me that I want to work more in the prevention realm of things.
Hmm. Hmm. So out of curiosity, and I just asked this question to a friend of mine who just graduated PA school not too long ago.
Hmm.
You were at Duke Medical. That's a
Hmm.
very prestigious school. Were you
Yes.
required to have any classes at all in nutrition?
No, there was no requirement. I don't even think we had one class. I
Hmm.
really don't. I think what they would do is combine the pathology. So you have the normal functioning body, and when something's wrong, there's some sort of pathology. And so they would teach you normal, then teach you what was wrong with the body, and then teach you how to fix it. And so within the treatment section of our curriculum, sometimes they'll say things like vitamin D, supplement with iron, check a
Hmm.
B12, but it's not they should eat this type of food that is rich in iron or anything like that. And so I
Hmm.
think it's lacking. And I'm sure there are some medical schools that have to have included it in the curriculum, but to my knowledge, Duke still doesn't have it.
Yeah. Yeah. This friend of mine, he said there was one. They had one class in all of their
Wow.
education. And I think it's important to point that out because sometimes people who want to take a more holistic approach, they end up developing this attitude of, well, doctors don't know what they're doing. Da, da, da. It's like, no, 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 no.
Hmm.
Just understand what doctors are trained for and
Right.
and get that from them. But if you're going to go to a medical doctor and expect to get the nutrition and the all the that kind of stuff, you're not really going to get that from most medical
Right.
doctors. So just understand that and do your research. Go to a doctor for what doctors are trained for and do your own research and talk to your doctor about that. I'm fortunate to have a doctor who's wonderful and really is open to having discussions and
Hmm.
all of that. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's important to point out.
Yeah, I really appreciate it when patients come to me and they do their research, but it's not just Google, it's, the credible, credible research. And they actually will say, hey, I have these symptoms. I've tried this supplement. It seems to help the symptoms. It just
Mhm.
that way we have a conversation and it's one that's based on, more on facts and not on my friend Susie had this and said to take her medication. Never do that, by the way. And and never share medication is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. But like, yeah, you get it.
Hmm. Absolutely. So you then, in the midst of all of this, you decided to, I don't know, maybe it was not miss, maybe it was after, but you developed a program for coaching for burnout specifically. Tell us about how
Mhm.
that came about.
Oh, yes. Okay. So that was years, years in the making, and you touched on it in the bio. But essentially, I went through medical school and I was struggling with my own mental health, residency, the same thing, suffering from burnout. And I realized that there would be no end to it. I could finish a residency, but then I would be a full-fledged attending physician with even more responsibility. So I had to come up with a system that focused on my own wellness, but also kept me productive. And so I found when I was burnt out that I struggled with procrastination. I struggled with like maintaining that motivation to get things done. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had to really take a step back and get centered and figure out, okay, I'm procrastinating. What are the ways in which I'm procrastinating? Why am I procrastinating? And just really dig deep. It's a lot of emotional work at first, and then it gets easier. You build that system, it becomes a pattern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell us what you found. Well, first of all, let's start with what we might be able to do to avoid burnout. And
Mhm.
then if we're already in the midst of it, in the throes of it, what can we do to alleviate that? What are your steps that you use?
So avoiding burnout, especially if you're an American citizen, is really tricky just because a part of it is our really strong work ethic, and our kind of belief in the underdog. So it's a great thing, but sometimes we just go down the wrong path. One way I found to keep you from just going over the edge and hitting burnout is to really focus on what matters to you. So knowing your core goals, your core values, right? So for example, I like to be of service to others, right? So if I'm going to take on any new responsibility, then I would stop and ask myself, like, hey, is this going to help someone else? Is this going to fill my cup, in a matter of just community service, volunteering? And if so, then I proceed to the next question of, do I have the bandwidth to handle that? And you have to be honest with yourself. And every now and then, mistakes will be made, and you have to have that compassion for yourself to not judge yourself harshly.
Hmm.
It's really quite simple. I wish I could make it sound fancy and like you need this device and you need to have this type of notebook like the bullet journal or but honestly, it's about knowing yourself, knowing where you're trying to go, and being kind enough to reorient yourself every so often.
Simple is good. We like simple.
Yes. Isn't it like Occam's razor? Like the simplest solution is usually the right one. And that's what
Yeah.
I found. I haven't found any fancier way to do it, but it's still hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Simple doesn't mean easy.
Right, exactly, exactly.
It just means not complicated.
Right. Okay. And then you had another question, right? You asked like if
Hmm.
you're already in burnout.
Hmm.
Okay. So similar first steps. But first, you need to figure out how you can take time for yourself and assess what's wrong, right? So when I was in medical school, it was really hard to find the time to just be by myself, decompress enough to just have that conversation and figure out what do I not like about this process. But it's exactly what I needed to do. And I just spent years not really committing to that. And that's why having someone help you is really helpful. I went to therapists, I had coaches, like I did all the things. And then you have to figure out how do I say this? Hmm. So you figure out what about the process you don't like, but then you also need to figure out what about the process you can actually change,
Mm.
right? Because a lot of our negative thoughts about work are about things that we can't even change. So we might
Mhm.
as well not even think about. We shouldn't even put our energy there. That's what's exhausting us, right? Because burnout is exhaustion, it's negative thoughts about your job, it's having decreased productivity because you're exhausted and having negative thoughts about your job. So if you can figure out what's within your control and then start maximizing that, then that can help you get out of it. But burnout is not so simple as like a flick of a switch, right? So you still do have to do the work and give it time.
Mhm. Yeah, to not expect to just go, oh, okay, I understand now, and it's all better.
Right. I would advise people not to make major decisions when they're burnt out, right?
Mm.
Like don't think, oh, now I need a career change because it may not be as serious as that. You just don't know yet. And that's something I see a lot of. I had a client who was really considering, quitting his job. And after we got him through that hump and got him over his procrastination, his lack of motivation, he likes his job now. His job was never the problem. So that's
Mhm.
something, just a cautionary tale.
Mhm.
Don't immediately think like you have to change scenery and that's going to fix it. That's not going to be the answer.
Yeah, I say because you take you wherever you go.
Exactly. Wherever you go, there you are. Isn't that the Zen book?
Yeah, yeah. So if you
Yeah.
take you and your negative attitude to another job, guess what?
Right.
The
Right.
negative attitude's going with you unless you change the attitude, and then you may or may not want to change your job.
Exactly. And and I don't want to place all the blame on the individual for having burnout. Like, yes, they have a negative attitude. There's usually a justifiable reason for it.
Mhm.
However, the mindset is everything. And if you can shift your mindset, that's how things affect you less, right? And so that's what we
Mhm.
work on. So it's a bit of time management, wellness coaching, and then cognitive optimization so that you can have that mindset shift and just get back to living your life, right?
Mhm. Yeah. And can we talk a minute about procrastination? Because I know this is something that a lot of people deal with.
Mhm.
And I have had clients who's like, well, I'm just a procrastinator. It's just how I am. It's just how I've always been. And I've been
Yeah. Yeah.
working with her to go, okay, let's watch that label. Can you talk a little bit about procrastination and maybe some of the causes
Yeah.
and the impact of labeling ourselves like that?
Yes. Oh, goodness. So, usually the cause of procrastination is some sort of negative emotion. So, I call it the procrastination anxiety cycle. And so, what typically happens is there's some type of stressor, you name it. You have a promotion at work, you have a report, you're going to take a driver's test. I don't know. A negative stressor. And because you're having this fear, this nervousness, anxiety about that stressor, now you don't feel well, right? And we are designed as humans to do something about that. And usually, the easiest thing to do is to procrastinate. So it's like our path of least resistance. We are afraid to do that report. And so we just keep putting it off. But it's a cycle because as you put it off, you start to feel more anxious, not less anxious. So you just did something in the short term that made you feel better, but in the long term, you feel terrible. And so eventually you get to the point where like the report is due and you have to work. And so now you're doing this kind of like last minute, 5 hours, not sleeping at night, whatever, to get the report done. And you feel terrible about it. And it reinforces this idea that the report was like awful in the first place. And it's just the cycle. You just keep doing it, right? And there are different types of procrastinators too.
Oh, tell us about that.
Yeah, so the most common one I found is the busy procrastinator, but there's the decisional procrastinator, the avoidant type, the perfectionist. I'm sure a lot of people will relate to that as well. And so the perfectionist procrastinator, I feel like that's probably most of the people I work with because they're high achievers, right? But you essentially don't do the task because you're afraid that you can't do it up to a certain level, right? And then I think that the busy procrastinator is also, I think it's around second most common, but it's sneakier because this person looks like they work all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but what they're working on is low yield. So they're not actually finishing that book or, starting that business because they're not doing the work that they need to do to make progress there. Instead, they're running around town, meeting people, shaking hands, signing up for classes, feeling like they need to get better just to move forward.
Yeah, that reminds me of Stephen Covey's four quadrants. Are you familiar with that? He talks about where we're most effective.
Oh, yes. Oh, wow. I haven't seen that in like 2 or 3 years. I do remember his four quadrants. Yes.
Yeah, where we're where the busy procrastinator would be very involved in things that are may or may not be important, and they may or may not be urgent. And
Right.
when we're doing not urgent, not important things, that's where we're least effective. When we're doing things that are not urgent, but are
Mhm.
important, that's where we're most effective. But it's easy to get trapped in oh, this is urgent and important. And we think that that's the most effective place to be, but it's not really.
Yeah, so okay, so the Eisenhower matrix. I don't think people call it that anymore, actually. I wonder if there's like a PC reason why we don't say that. But yes, usually one of the best ways to stay productive is to figure out what is your most important task and your most urgent task. However, it really depends on what your values are, and that's where people get it mixed up. Is that even when they think they're prioritizing, they're not really connected with, their life purpose, what would bring them joy. So they're doing something that's not actually filling their cup. And then they're wondering why,
Mhm.
they lack that motivation and they feel burnt out.
And sometimes what we're doing is what we think people like, either we think people expect of us or what people actually do expect of us. But it may or may not be aligned with what's important to us.
Right. Yeah. It is tricky though, especially if you're a woman. That's a huge
Mhm.
thing. You do a lot of what others, you think others want you to do, just
Mhm.
that people pleaser
Mhm.
personality type. Um, Honestly, have you heard of Enneagrams?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. So it was interesting taking that quiz because one of the cautions with it is that a lot of women will fall into type 2, which is the helper. And so if you're a woman, you have to be really careful to make sure that's not your kind of trained type, personality type, just
Mhm.
because society. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I really do believe that women, you know, it's called a woman's heart. It's called,
Mhm.
the mothering instinct, whether we're mothers or not. So that's a real thing. But
Yes.
to keep that in balance and not let that be something that is going to then cause us to do things that are not in alignment with what's important to us. And this has come up in more than one interview, being aligned with our core values,
Yes.
understanding what that is, and then aligning our life with that. It makes all the difference.
It does. And it doesn't happen overnight, right? You can't
No.
just journal for a couple of hours, maybe even for a week, and think you're going to figure it out. It's taken me years. And I get closer. And then, like I said, sometimes I veer a little off the path, but because I have my system, I figure it out before it's, 5, 10 years down the road. I just get back on track and it works.
Hmm. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that's an important point to not expect it to just go, oh, magic bullet, here we go. It's
Right.
all better now. Because it's a continual process. Even
Yeah.
like you figured things out, you have a specific system in place, but even having that doesn't make everything automatically all sunshine and roses. It's
Right.
a process because we're here to learn, and that's part of life.
Right. Yeah, I call it the calm and productive lifestyle system because that's my goal.
Mhm.
I want to be calm and I want to be productive. And it's just all about, honestly, forgiveness and fail safes. So know that you are going to have days where you're not as energetic and can't do as much. And then have those fail safes. So, like, basically having time etched into your schedule so that you can make up for what you didn't do.
Mhm.
Right. And just catch yourself. Things that okay, if I go to the dentist that day, I know I'm going to be tired or I hate going to the dentist, so my emotions are going to be all over the place. I know I'm just going to give myself a break that day.
Mhm.
Right. So,
Yeah, that requires a good amount of self-awareness, and it's really important to develop that, especially if we have been trained to be people pleasers and we're thinking of everybody else's concerns before our own.
yes.
So, JK, what have you found are some of the, other than procrastination,
Mhm.
some of the things that are the biggest challenges that people face in the area of creating burnout or recovering from burnout?
I think the biggest challenge, especially for high achieving professionals, is this belief that they can think their way through it. Like, and I know it sounds, I know how this sounds, but it's true because even I will do it honestly. And you will spend an hour, 2 hours, sometimes weeks on a topic, and it's stressing you out. You're not sleeping at night, and you keep trying to find the answer with this rumination, just going in circles. And I just wish people would realize that, like, thinking your way to the solution is just really not the best route. Even if you did get to the solution, which rarely happens, you just wasted all that time being distraught, right? Like digging yourself deeper into the hole. So it's kind of like how, say, you're nervous about an exam and you spend all evening thinking about the exam, but the exam isn't happening until the next day, right? It's kind of just a waste. And so I want, if you take anything away from this, it's to rest as much as you can. Center yourself. If you like going for hikes or something, do that. Be out in nature. If you meditate, meditate, but do not try to force an answer by thinking about it so much. That's the biggest mistake people do, and it just keeps them stuck in burnout.
Mhm. And that's, I just laughed when you said that because it's like, I have done that. And I know so many people who have. It's like, okay, I'm
Exactly.
smart enough to figure this out. So if I just
Exactly.
think on this long enough, the answer will appear.
Exactly. No, and I've done that too. Like I cannot judge. You just think that the answer has to show up if you work hard at it. And it's that go-getter kind of American spirit,
Mhm.
right? And that's great. It helps you accomplish things, but it's just not great for this.
Yeah. And it's important to realize the upside and the downside of
Right.
things like the American spirit or, the culture that we live in and that kind of thing. It's like there are real positive things, but also be aware of the things that are challenging so that we can know and oh, that's not the good part of this and do something else about it.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So are there any maybe myths about this, about burnout that you might want to bust here today?
Okay. Okay. Myths. Okay. So number one, burnout is not the same thing as depression, right? So
Mm,
it does not need to be treated the same way. That is not to say that you cannot have burnout and depression. So burnout are the three things I said before, right? Like you're exhausted, you have these negative thoughts, feelings about your job, you're not really performing that well. And when you're depressed, you have changes in your sleep, you don't have interest in doing things as much, maybe you feel a little guilty because you feel like you're letting other people down, and you don't have you have exhaustion as well, lack of concentration, changes in appetite, like all these things, right? And if you take a break long enough with burnout, perhaps you start to recover. With depression, not so much, right? It just kind of is chronic, it simmers. um hmm I think a lot of times people they think that burnout is about work only, and I even just kept saying work, work, work. It doesn't have to be work. It can be relationships too, right? So it could be your relationship. It can even be a passion project. So that's something to keep in mind. Um, and usually burnout comes from chronic stress, and chronic stress can literally shrink your brain. It can shrink the
mm.
area of your brain that helps you make good decisions. It can make you more fearful and actually lower your IQ. So if you've ever been wondering whether you should do something about this now, I feel like you should do something about this now.
Yeah, those are really lovely side effects, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, JK, you have an offering for everyone who has registered for this event. And then you also have a VIP offer for those who purchased or will purchase the VIP package. You want to tell us about those?
Sure, yes. So I would love for everyone who's registered for this event to do the procrastinator type quiz. I talked about it briefly. It's something I'm really passionate about. So if you're wondering how do you procrastinate, right? Am I the busy procrastinator? Am I the avoidant, decisional? You can take the quiz for free and find out what type of procrastinator you are. And if you're interested in getting help overcoming your procrastination, your lack of motivation, and achieving your goals without burnout, then we can talk about my common productive lifestyle system.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I want to wrap this up with my favorite question to you, Dr. Jackee. What do you think are one or two or three of your top things that are integral to having a life that's nourishing body and soul?
Okay, I would say the number one thing that is integral about nourishing your body and your soul is to be loved and to love. I think we're all here to have life-changing relationships. And so if you want to feel like you are living a life of purpose, I would recommend first looking at the people around you and how you feel when you're with them, when you help them, whatever you do with them. That's what I believe.
Mm, that's beautiful. I could not agree more. I
Thank
could not
you.
agree more. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you being here with us, and really appreciate all the tips and the insight that you've given us. We appreciate that. And if you would like to connect with Dr. Jackee, we will have an email that comes to you with all of her information where you can find her, how you can get a hold of her, and then also to claim your free offer of taking her procrastination type quiz.
Yes.
And that will help you get on your way to creating a life that truly nourishes you, body and soul.